I am Adam Weil, partner at White Rabbit Group. Welcome to the Pixel Perfect podcast, where we share knowledge, experiences, and motivations from creatives and entrepreneurs. Today on the Pixel Perfect podcast, we're joined by Dan Weil, designer, agency founder, and I would say one of the most transparent voices in the creative business space. Dan spent, for those of you that don't know Dan, he spent over a decade building and rebuilding his agency, while along the way really openly sharing revenue numbers, real lessons, real trade-offs along the way. I think his journey really proves that growth is not just linear and that profitability doesn't have to come at the cost of sanity. So really excited. We're going to talk today about, really what it takes to stop selling hours and start selling outcomes. So we're going to dive super deep into that and just, how to make smarter decisions around pricing, clients, growth. So if you're running a design or development agency and want a business that is both profitable and calm, this conversation is for you. So Dan, welcome on.
Awesome. What a great intro. Adam, thank you for inviting me on this podcast. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet, man. Super excited to get into it. I think we can talk about probably a million different things, but where we're going to focus is about, selling outcomes. So if hourly pricing is so limited, let's start here. Like, why do agencies keep choosing it, and let's start there.
Yeah, cool. The biggest reason is that hourly pricing is easy. And so there are a lot of people who say hourly billing is terrible and it's evil and it's immoral and it's all that stuff. And I have my own opinions about that, but my overall take is price the way that you understand. Because if you use any pricing methodology that you don't understand, then you're not going to be able to do well. So most agencies do the hourly pricing thing because it's easy. Most people in the world know how to price, how to buy and sell hourly. Right? If you work at a fast food place, you get paid hourly. When you go hire a plumber or whatever, you pay them hourly usually. So it's an easy thing to do, which is why I think it makes sense to start there. What I don't like about hourly is that you very quickly reach a ceiling. And then once you reach the ceiling, you're like, well, I don't know what else to do. And I think that's the time that you start to explore some other methodologies that actually can break through that ceiling for you in terms of revenue and profit.
Got it. I like that framing where it's like, yeah, if you're uncomfortable doing outcome-based selling, it's probably because you just don't understand it.
Yep.
So what's maybe the first outcome an agency should sell if they've never sold outcomes before? Help us kind of work our way into that with maybe the mindset, and then what are the tangibles of that?
Yeah, cool. If I get a bit semantic about all this.
Yeah.
All right. So I think outcome-based selling is just one form of a larger umbrella thing, which is value-based pricing. So selling outcomes is one way that you can talk about value to a client. So we could talk about outcome-based pricing. We could also talk about value-based pricing and the way to sell those things and frame those things. But I generally, what I tend to teach my students and the people that I coach is value-based pricing, of which outcome-based selling and outcome-based pricing can be one of those things, but one among many, many different things.
Got it. Okay, so what's the distinction between those two?
So value-based pricing, essentially, the way that I define it, and there's a lot of different definitions of it, the way that I like to define it is value-based pricing is about pricing the moment. And so what I mean by that is, a lot of us have been in situations where we have no clients right now. So your value at that point is really low. You have no leverage. So you'll take whatever. If on the other hand, on the other side of the spectrum, if you're just flooded with clients and you don't have any time left, well, you can charge as much as you want, right? Because the supply and demand tension is different at both ends of that spectrum. Right. So as we're talking about pricing the moment, it's like, where are you in what you can sell authentically? And then also, where is your client or your prospect in that too? If they're a startup and they're about to raise a Series D, that's different than if they're a startup and about to go into bankruptcy, right? Those are different moments, even though it's the same client. So value-based pricing is really the overlap between your moment and their moment, and what each of you would accept and go, yeah, that's worth it for both of us, right? And that's when we can do a deal. So all of the different forms of value-based pricing usually have that stuff in common.
I like that framing. It's not just where you're at, but it's also taking into consideration where they're at. And then what you said also, I mean, how I think about it, agency growth is like 3 stages. And I'd love to get your thoughts on this. It's like, there's that survival mode. where maybe you're starting out and everything is so vital. And then there's like a stabilization period. And then there's like scaling, where things are kind of moving and you got momentum. So do you think it changes as you go through through those stages?
100%. So I teach the same stages. I can just use different words for them. So, and I have a fourth one after the scaling one, which is there's cash reserve building mode is usually the first mode.
Okay.
Then positioning mode is the second mode, right? Where it's like, I got enough cash reserves in the bank. And now it's really about establishing reputation with a certain set of clients that will allow us to price at a premium level, become experts, all that kind of stuff.
Mm,
Then scaling from there. Once you're able to deliver something, then maybe you can productize it. And then after that, you get expansion where you can decide, I'm going to grow my agency, or I'm going to keep it small, or I'm going to invest profits in something, or we're going to incubate something, or we're going to start a skunk, whatever you do from there in your expansion phase. So
right.
generally, yes. And in each of those phases, you do something different with pricing to basically get to the next stage. So
Mm,
when you're in cash reserve building mode, you shouldn't accept projects for free. Why would you do that? You're trying to build a cash reserve. So
yeah.
doing free projects is actually the worst thing to do in that mode. But when you're in positioning mode, sometimes taking free projects is the best thing you can do because you're
Mm,
trying to establish reputation and you're good on the cash front. So
mm.
when it comes to pricing, depending on what phase or what mode you're in, it definitely affects how you want to price, what you're pricing, what you're actually selling to clients, and in what way.
Yeah, it's funny. Some people are super dogmatic about like never give anything away for free, but I do feel like in that early stage, like it gets you experience too. Like, you know what I mean? You can really test things out and without the pressures of having to deliver for them if you're super early.
Totally. And I think that that's even like a pre-stage, right? It's like you
Mm,
have to be able to be good enough at your craft or whatever it is that you do or deliver that you can actually do and deliver it, right? So in that
right.
mode, you're not really worried about cash more than you are actually building up your skills to be able to be marketable because that's pre-marketable at that point. But
Mm,
then once you're marketable enough, then you're like, well, I can't just keep taking free projects because I have to eat. Right.
right.
So then you're in cash flow reserve building mode. And then you're like, I need to build some cash up, and you can't keep doing projects for free.
Mm,
Otherwise, you start to do projects, and then you're like, I also need to have a part-time job somewhere in order to get money to eat. So
yeah.
for sure, all those modes I think change for sure.
Okay, so walk us through that. So say you're in the early stages and now maybe you've been doing something that it's not what you want to do. Like for example, it's not the type of project you want to do, or maybe you're doing it at a cost that you don't want to do. But a lot of times when you're starting, you're surviving off referrals. And so that person that you just gave this, free work for or low cost work for, or the work that you didn't really enjoy doing is now referring to someone else like them. So how do you get out of that cycle? What does that look like?
Yes. So it's a little bit counterintuitive because I think when we're in early stages, whether that's early stages of a business or early stages of a career, you're like, all right, well, I just want to build up my skills and, I'll do stuff for free. But actually that's why I call it cash flow, or cash reserve building mode is because you're not supposed to do stuff just to learn. You should be past that stage already. That's pre-marketable, that's pre-revenue, whatever that is. If you're
Mhm.
actually in cash flow mode or cash reserve building mode, then your job is to build as much cash as possible, which means you should do the most lucrative things, even if you don't like them, even if you don't want to do them, even if you don't want to build a business doing those things, you should be doing the most lucrative thing that you can do to build your cash reserves as quickly as possible. For some people, and I literally teach my students this and coach around this, for some people, the most lucrative thing that they can do at a given time, when I talk about price in the moment, is babysit, is drive
Babysit.
Uber, is
Mhm.
get a part-time job, like
Mm,
sweep the streets, landscape. Like
yeah.
people don't like hearing this, but when you're in cash flow building mode, you do those things because it's harder for you to sell, building whatever vibe code app for a startup than it is for you to just go door to door and be like, will you pay me $600 to clean up your lawn? Cash
Yeah.
flow immediately on that day.
Mm,
And then when you get referrals for that, then you're getting referred for the highest lucrative thing that you can do, not the lowest thing. Oh, I did that vibe code app for $50. All right.
mm,
So then that person's going to recommend you to another $50 vibe code app, and it's going to take you forever to build your cash reserves. Instead,
mm,
that's not the most lucrative thing you can do. What is the most lucrative thing that you can do with the skills that you have? And again, it's about pricing the moment. In
mm,
this moment, I can't charge a lot of money for a vibe coded app or for a, whatever it is, CRM build, custom CMS, whatever it is. What I
mhm,
can do is I can do this other more lucrative activity to give me the cash runway that I actually could go build the business that I want. When
mm,
people conflate the two, it's chasing two rabbits. It's like one of my favorite quotes. It's if you
mm.
chase two rabbits, you will catch neither.
Yeah.
So when you're trying to combine them in the same phase, it gets really tough.
Yeah. 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 That's a really good point. Like anything you can do to avoid that sort of desperation phase, because
Well,
I
I
feel
think
like
it's a
you're shooting
mindset
yourself.
thing. I
Yeah.
think it's a mindset because, like, to me, there's nothing desperate about landscaping or washing someone's car. People do that as very lucrative and profitable business. Are they desperate? They're not.
Right. Right.
We just think of that as lower, right? So I think
Right.
it's a mindset thing. It's like, no, no, we're not stooping to that level. We're
Right.
doing things that actually fund our business, and that's
Totally.
okay. And so I think it's like if we think of those things as desperate, then we're going to act desperate, we're going to treat it desperate, we're going to cheapen out of the offer, to someone. And it's like, no,
Hmm.
no, it's not that. If you're babysitting, go be the best babysitter you can be, so that
Yeah.
person pays you a ton of money so that you could stop babysitting, right? Like
Right.
that's the thing that you want to do.
That's
but i
smart.
but I
Yeah.
think if I think it's a mindset thing that we have to treat it as like, no, this is what I'm doing right now for my business as an investment,
Yeah.
not as a desperation play.
Totally. Totally. Well, and I was thinking too more on the. I think sometimes I've been guilty of this. I've started a couple companies when you feel like you're too good to do something like that, and you live in desperation on the other side where you're just not willing to make those hard decisions. And then I think the vicious cycle can continue where you then just accept any client, right, to
Yes.
survive, and you never get out of it.
Totally. And I think that's why the modes are so important. It's like in the cash reserve building mode, you do whatever you can. In the positioning mode, you don't. In the positioning mode, that's the time where you're like, I'm going to be super picky about what I do and what I don't do. And the
Mm-hmm.
list of things that I won't do and don't do is going to be super long in that phase. In
Mm,
the previous phase, no, no, the list of things I'm going to do is infinite. I'll do anything,
yeah,
legally,
yeah,
or morally. I will
yeah.
do anything for someone. That's why, like, it's called client service. Service, the service part we forget about. It's supposed to be humble. We're supposed to be in service of people. What is the thing that they need most? They need their kids taken care of. They need their lawn cleaned. They need their car
Mm,
washed. They need, what, like, cool, let's go do that for them.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
that's a really great thing to do for someone. It's the service part. And
Hmm.
so I think if we're not willing to humble ourselves in that mode to go, hey, I'll do whatever I need to do to build my business in order to get to a point where I don't have to do everything, in the world to build the business.
Yeah. I think that really plays in nicely too with the realities that uh, it takes a while for a business to really get momentum. Like you need to be talking online, putting your message out there like over and over and over until it hits. And I think if you have some sort of side business, you have something to take care of you so that you can keep on that journey, then it's just more time for that message to sink in and expand.
100%. Totally agree.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, it's really interesting when you think about the stages. Where do you think that people get hung up the most? I mean, it seems like it gets easier, I guess, as you go up the ladder, right? As you get, you know, as you get to the kind of scale and cash flow. But
I think that's a myth.
yeah,
Uh, every stage of business has problems, right? If you make it $50 million in a business, still problems there, right?
sure.
So I think that it's a myth that anytime you graduate to the next stage, it's like, oh, the problems get lighter. No, there are people who are making $100 businesses, $100 million businesses who have problems. It's just that the problems are upgraded, right? So
Mhm.
they're different. Maybe they're lighter in some ways, but it's not. You're not at a point where you don't have any problems.
Mm,
There's a great designation of that in the book, Ready, Fire, Aim, where he talks about, like, at all these different stages, when you're making $10 million, you have a new problem. When you're $0 to $1 million, you're just figuring out what to do. That's the main problem. When
yeah.
you're $1 million to $10 million, then the problem becomes about how do I scale this and how do I scale the operations. When you're at 10 million to $100 million, then it's about, I forget what that problem is, but then when you get $100 million or more, what's the problem there? Trying to act small. Right.
Mm,
So like
mhm.
most of the companies that are that big, they actually are trying to act small again. So
Yeah.
like the problems just upgrade. And I think
Mm,
that's the idea of building a business, is like, you want to upgrade your problems. The problems that you have when you're making, $10 an hour are different problems, than when you're making $100 an hour or $1,000 an hour or a month, or, whatever it is. So you want to
right.
just upgrade your problems as your business grows.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes total sense. Okay. Interesting. So tell me a little bit more about, make more money. I mean, I love your branding, right? Get your flowers, make your money. It's super transparent. Yeah. Who is it for, and what do you think the real value in it is?
Yeah. So Make More Money, it's a coaching program for agency owners. And it's for agency owners who are making 100K or more, and then are really trying to scale up to a million. And
Okay.
that could be, a small studio, a handful of people, 2 to 10 people. It could be a solo person, a one person shop who maybe has a network of freelancers or has a couple people helping them out here and there. Or it could be a bigger shop, from there who wants to scale even more. So it's really for that group, because I think that there's a danger zone around 250K. When a
Okay.
business is making 250K, it feels like a lot of money on paper. Like if you see that number written down, you're like, oh, that's a lot of money. That's more money than most people will make at a full time job.
Yeah.
But when agency owners are making 250K, it feels like a trap, right? Because they're like, I'm maxed out. Usually they're like, I'm working 80 hours a week. I'm only making 250K, which is like not quite enough to pay for taxes and my business and then hire somebody and then pay me.
Mm.
So it's this trap. And so what I try to coach for is I try to get people who are in that stage. Okay, how do we get you to about 400?
Mm.
400 to 500K a year. Because at that point, that's when you start to realize, like, oh, I see why I'm running a business. It's really
Mhm.
hard. It's harder than working a full time job in a lot of ways, but
Yeah.
it's worth it. It's worth it financially, at least, because I'm
Okay.
starting to see the profit that can come from that and the opportunities that it exposes. Right, and
Right.
then from there, then it's just about scaling and being smarter, working smarter, not harder, in order to
Yep.
get to a million and then more.
And what does that look like? If you don't mind, I'd love to kind of lift up the hood on that a little bit. Where would you first direct someone at that stage to try to work their way up to that 400?
From the like 100, 200 level.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the first things is figuring out where you need help.
Okay.
So usually at that point, and there's the case is different for everybody, but usually at that point, the founder, the owner is usually comes from being a craftsperson. They're a designer or an engineer or something like that, and now they run a business, and they realize like, oh, it's two jobs at least. It's marketing and innovation. And
Mm.
so if I'm doing usually where most people falls, if I'm doing the marketing stuff, I'm not doing the delivery stuff or the innovation stuff. If I'm
Right.
doing delivery or innovation, I'm not doing the marketing stuff. And usually
Right.
one thing suffers as a result of it. So one of the first pieces
Right.
is going like, how can I actually have help in what I'm doing? That
Mm.
could mean hiring somebody. That could mean building something like an automation or things like that. But part of it is just changing your mindset, which then changes your identity to being like, I'm not a solo freelancer, right? Because I think there's a
Mhm.
connotation that comes with that. Not a bad one, but I think one that limits a lot of people. And
Yeah.
going like, how do I actually free up my time to be able to build something a little bit better, so that I'm actually in the right place? Because when you start a thing on your own, you're doing all the stuff. Yes, you're doing the design and the build and all that stuff, but you're also like sending invoices and responding to emails and watering the plants. Like there's a bunch of stuff
Yeah.
that you shouldn't be doing as the owner, as the CEO, that I think a lot of people don't know how to not do that stuff. So that's usually the first unlock, is how do you get some of that time back to basically
Mhm.
focus on where you can make the most money?
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. And then do you find people at that point are doing hourly pricing, or do you feel like they've kind of made the transition to the more value based, outcome based?
Almost no one does value pricing, and almost no
Good.
one does it well. So for most people, it's usually some mix of hourly pricing or some sort of time based retainer. So monthly retainers with clients. The subscription model has become like a really big thing in the last couple of years, where people have
Yeah.
subscriptions, which I think is a different flavor of a retainer. So
Right.
most of the people that I work with are people who are doing something like that, and they're starting to reach the ceilings of those things.
Mm.
And we could talk about why that is, but usually they're like, I need something more than this, or I need something that actually handles the problems that I'm experiencing with these pricing models.
And you feel like the value base is the solution to that.
I think there's one gateway right before that, which is changing your mindset away from selling your time. So, however that is, value based is one way to do that. There's a bunch of other ways to do that too. But if you're just selling your time has a cap. So
Mhm.
you can only value, or not value, excuse me. You can only sell your time for so much, because people will have price resistance there. If
Mhm.
you start to say to your clients, well, my hourly rate is $525 an hour, their mind goes in all sorts of weird places.
Yeah.
Well, do I pay my doctor that? Do I pay my lawyer that? The last plumber I hired was $80 an hour. I kind of think of you like a plumber. Like they don't say
Mm.
these things, but all these things are going through their heads.
Mhm.
So I think that's the price resistance that clients and prospects usually have when your hourly rate gets to be so high, whatever that is in your industry. And so that usually is the ceiling, is like, well, I can't charge more than, you know, $350 an hour, because clients just won't buy it at that level. So what do I do now if I want to make more money? I don't
Yeah,
have more
yeah.
time. I can't charge more. What other levers can I push and pull?
So give us a little taste of that mindset. How do you start to fix that? Because I do think that you get a lot of pressure from the clients. Like you said, they're comparing you to other hourly rates. They're maybe have paid that to their previous designer, developer. They're used to that. How do you get through that?
Yeah, so a couple of mindset shifts. The first one that I like to talk about is Parkinson's law, which for people who are listening who don't know what Parkinson's law is, Parkinson's law says work expands to fit in the time allotted for it. Right. So if you give something 3 weeks or 4 weeks, it'll take 3 weeks or 4 weeks. If you give something 3 days, it'll take 3 days. And I think that a lot of people feel like, whether or not they actually think this or not, but I think a lot of people have assume that a particular deliverable has a particular set of time associated with it. Oh, a web design, a web project takes 3 months. An app project takes 6 months. A CRM project takes this amount of time. And I think
Mhm.
unlocking that idea or decoupling that idea of like, well, there's a web design project that could take 3 months, yes, but there's also one that could take 6 months or 12 months or 4 months or 2 months or 1 month or 1 week, right? And so for most of us, if we think about our side projects or things that we do for ourselves,
Yeah.
sometimes we build websites in a day. And sometimes we build websites in a week, and sometimes we build websites in a month and a year, and and all that stuff. So if we start to then make that client facing and go, it doesn't matter, if they're buying a website, that doesn't mean it's automatically a 3 month project. It just means they're buying a website. So the
Mhm.
question no longer becomes, well, buying a website equals 3 months. What is a website worth to them? And I think that question starts to unlock, like, well, how do I answer that question?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. How do you answer that question? Sometimes those are hard ones.
Yeah, for sure. But I think a lot of us don't ask our clients that, right? And
Mm.
and the few of us that do, how does a client know how to answer that question? They have no idea. This might be the first time they ever bought a website from someone,
Mm.
right? So it's on us as the service providers to go, they've only bought a website once or twice, but we've sold websites hundreds of times. So we actually know what it's worth to our clients, especially when we're well positioned, especially when we're in a scenario where we've sold this thing multiple times. We've sold websites to startup multiple times. We've sold websites to, dentists, whoever our ICP is, whoever our ideal customer profile is. We've done that multiple times. So we could say as experts to them, hey, every time I built a website for a dentist, usually what happens is they get anywhere from 100 to 200 more customers a month.
Mm.
Oh, okay. Well, how much is a customer worth? Well, every new customer is worth $100. Oh, so 100 new customers is worth 10 grand to you, right? So we can quantify that stuff based on what changes after we do our work. But
Mhm.
we usually don't talk about that stuff. We're not focused on it. We're focused on, well, this is the task that we have to do. We have to set up a server, and we have to use these tools, and then we have to have this team, and then we have to do a design phase. And that, like, we're so
Yeah.
focused on the
Features.
inputs,
Yeah.
yeah, features, right? That, like, we don't focus on, well, what's supposed to change for our clients after we deliver really good work to them. And then
Yeah.
that change is the thing that we price.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I think we know that too intuitively in a lot of ways. We just don't act on it. Like White Rabbit, the company I'm a part of, we have kind of a rule that we work with agencies a lot and they outsource their development to us. And, if their client is not doing more than $10 million a year in revenue, chances are they can't afford us, right? Like it's not, the value isn't there for them to be able to afford our full stack service, because what we provide is like front end developer, back end QA, all these extra people, and they just can't afford it if they're at that earlier stage as an organization. So you're right. Once you start to get into the weeds of understanding what is the real impact for this business, if it's a you know shell or a large corporation, I mean that website could be worth lots. Or if it's an e-commerce or a dentist, like you need to get into the weeds of that stuff and know that, and not just be kind of a vendor. So how do you start to do that? I guess you got to look at analytics. You got to look at different tools that they have to understand the impact there.
100%. Yeah, like, we have to know what the impact is. And a lot of the people that I coach, when I ask them, like, so what did you do for your last client? Like, what changed for them? They're like, oh,
Mm,
I don't know. I was like, all right, well, how can you go find that out? Well,
mm,
I don't have access to analytics. How could you go get access to analytics? You send an email and you say, hey, can I have access to the analytics? Right. And for
mm,
a lot of, and it sounds simple, but for a lot of agency owners, they're like, huh, never thought to do that. And it's like,
mm,
cool,
mhm.
go get access.
Yeah.
And a lot of, and then even past that, a lot of us are like, well, am I allowed to ask for that?
Mm,
And the mindset shift there is, yeah, experts don't work without access to that,
mm,
right? Like,
right.
if some client said, well, we want you to change stuff, but we won't give you access to see if anything changed. That's a ludicrous idea.
Mm,
Why would we tolerate that?
mhm.
right? So it's on us as experts, it's on us as service providers to go like, well, we don't work like that. And that's where, like, and I should have said this earlier, oftentimes I can't teach pricing without teaching positioning, because the two are in such lockstep. If you're just some Joe Schmo off the street and you ask your client for analytics access, they're going to be like, no, why would I
Mm,
do that? What's the incentive for them to do that? But if you're some expert that has the potential to change their business drastically, they'll give you all the access that you need. Right. So for us, we have to have the reputation to be able to say to our clients, well, if you want this change, this is what's required. I
okay.
require access to this. I need your team with me on for this amount of time per week. This is how we work. Right. And in
Right.
order for us to deliver this result, this is how we need to do it. If you don't give us this thing, how can we say that we're going to get that result?
Mm,
So I think
mm,
a lot of it is on us to
yeah.
have the stances and the policies in our own businesses to go, these are our prerequisites. And if we
Yeah.
don't have that, then sorry, you're not a good fit right now.
Mm. Yeah. That's a strong positioning too. It lets them know how serious you are.
Yes.
And the fact that someone's not willing to work with me because I won't give them analytics access, they must be a real expert. And I'm
Yes.
also now the buyer instead of,
Yes.
you know what I mean? Like
Yes.
I'm trying to choose them and like I don't know if they want me. So it's a really interesting reframe. Interesting. What else on this topic I think maybe gets overlooked or people just don't think deeply enough about?
Can I push you on something that you said to me earlier?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So you said if our clients aren't at a particular level of revenue, they can't afford us.
Mhm.
So that implies a couple of things, which might be true, but a lot of us don't take the time to question it. So, as an example, um, does that mean that you have set prices for things?
We do have set prices for things. Yeah.
Okay, what can you? Would you be willing to share an example of a set price?
I'll tell you, for us right now, we are primarily hourly.
Okay,
So, so that's pretty much our set price. We have a spreadsheet. We have line items. We put minimum hours, maximum hours that we estimate, and then that estimate we'll present to the partner. And then if we need to fix it, we will pick a number that is reasonable for them, and we'll negotiate that.
cool. So that's predicated on a lot of things that may or may not be true. Uh, and I'm not talking about you in particular. I'm talking about anybody who prices that way. So one is you have an hourly rate. Usually that's made up. We'll come back to that in a minute. And then you also have a time estimate, and humans are really bad at time estimates, especially the longer projects go.
Mm,
Right. So you have two fictions that you're basing a price on, right? And what do most of us do? Not all of us do this. What do most of us do when we say, all right, well, our hourly rate is $100 an hour, and we think the project is going to take 100 hours, so it's going to cost $10,000. And a
mhm,
client goes, ooh, we only have 8,000 in our budget.
mhm,
What do most of us do? We go, okay, we'll do it for 8,000.
mhm.
That's it. No renegotiation on scope. No. So what does that mean? So what part did you make up? Are you now taking it at $80 an hour instead? Or is it that you're still at $100 an hour, but the project now takes 20 less hours? Like what changed when we negotiate that way? And
Well,
so for a lot of us,
yeah,
we don't interrogate those kinds of things in our business to be
right.
able to say, well, our minimum price is this. It's really just this is what we want the price to be, which is not a strong argument to a client if they start to interrogate that stuff. Right.
Yeah,
And so a lot of us don't have those stances. And that's one of the ceilings on pricing in a way that's based on a time estimate, based on a time rate, and then an estimate. Right. And that's
yeah.
where we start to outgrow it after that, after a while.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Another thing that happens too is we say, "Oh, well, we need to descope this. If your budget's 8K, then what are we taking away?" But unfortunately, often, unless you have a really solid account management team, what often happens is the partner is a little bit disappointed, and then you know you're not as likely to get repeat business, at that point because they're just not as happy.
Yeah. And what a terrible way to do business. Just chase around your client's feelings. That's terrible. It's
Yeah,
awful. So I think a better way to do it is like if you are pricing in a way that's not about your time and is about something else, and outcomes is one of those things. We haven't even gotten to what the other things could be. If you're pricing in that way, then ideally or technically, you should be able to take a project at any price. So, as an example, some people, if I said to them, especially bigger web design agencies or design agencies, if I said like, if a client came to you with $1,000 budget, what would you say? Most of them would say, well, most of them would, the gut reaction would be, no, too low. And if I pushed them on that, even more, they would say, well, our minimum level of engagement is, somewhere higher than that, $10,000 per project or 20, whatever that is. And it's
yeah.
based on, some formula that they've got. And I'm like, but what if the project was a phone call?
Mm.
What if the project was you get on the phone with the client for an hour and just tell them stuff to do, and they're like, "Thank you, that was awesome. That gave us exactly what we need. Here's an hour. Here's $1,000 for that hour." You just made $1,000 an hour. Who makes that? Isn't that higher than your hourly rate?
Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden, your minimum level of engagement changes because the project's different. So I think
Mm-hmm.
a lot of us go in with all these assumptions with like, oh, we only take projects on here. Well, that assumes that what the client wants from you is a specific project, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they come in asking for that, but we're not creative enough to come up with other things for them. What if a client does have $8,000 and your estimate came up to 10,000? Can you be more creative than just chopping off 20 hours of this thing? Basically saying, yeah, we'll just reduce the quality of this thing for you. That never works out for anybody.
Yeah.
So how creative can you be? So a lot of the things that I coach around is uh, the we have ceilings and floors in business, right? And the ceiling is creativity. Most of us are not exercising creativity well enough to serve our
Mm-hmm.
clients well. Most
Mm-hmm.
of us go, well, there's the formula, take it or leave it. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, cool. If you are one of the most in-demand agencies in the world and you can get away with that, that's great. Like, good on you. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But you're gonna stand to a fictional formula. You're gonna hold to that, and then also in the same breath whine about how you didn't make your month. Well, that's
Yeah.
a creativity problem. That's not a
Yeah.
pricing problem. That's not a rates problem. That's not a client problem. That's not a market problem. That's not an economy problem. That is a creativity problem.
Yeah. 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 That's good. I like these reframes, and I think a lot of people just get stuck in what other people are doing, and we don't figure out creative solutions. Ironic because we're creatives, right?
Ironic, exactly. Ironic. There's two ironies there. The first irony is that our job literally is we call us creatives. We call ourselves creatives. Why are we not exercising creativity in all aspects of our business, not just what we deliver, not just in the design phase or in the brainstorming phase or whatever? Creativity should permeate all the things that we do, right? So it's ironic in that way, and in the other way, it's ironic from a service standpoint too. It's like it's supposed to be service.
Mm-hmm.
It's not supposed to be take it or leave it. It's supposed to be, all right, let's figure out what I can do for you. If I'm not the right person, can I refer you to someone who is?
Mm.
And maybe get a referral fee from that person. Hey, look, income for not even doing anything, revenue. Again, creativity problems.
Right.
And so I think like from a creativity standpoint, we don't exercise that as much as we should or could. And I
Mm.
think like if you're running a landscaping business or a plumbing business where creativity is not your main, driver, then okay, you got to pass. But for design agencies to not be creative enough, I think there's no excuse for that.
Yeah. I want to go back to something you were talking about earlier, which is kind of that the value piece. Like, how do you communicate that? How do you educate, folks on that piece? Are there certain things that people should be doing to get their content out there in a way that educates people so that when they have those conversations, maybe they're a little bit more prepared for it?
And when you say content in terms of like content marketing or things like that.
Content marketing, I'm assuming, like, how do you get your message out there? Obviously, you have your network and your referrals early on, but eventually you're going to want to expand beyond that.
So I think that one question that a lot of people don't ask around that is where. When we talk about content, I think when a lot of people talk about putting your content out there, usually our minds go to a specific place, which is like, oh, I got to post on LinkedIn or Twitter or Instagram or wherever that is, and it's like, well, that's one form of content marketing, and for most people, it's not the most effective. So for the students in my program and the people that I coach, I usually dissuade them from doing content marketing, and we can get into why. I'm usually like, don't do that. There's probably better ways that you can do it. And one way to do it is, yes, get your content out there, but the where matters. It doesn't have to be on LinkedIn all the time. For some markets or industries that you're in, and again, this is related to positioning and niching and having a specific audience that you're talking to. Some people, if dentists are your audience, well, where are dentists going to come across your content? What
Mm,
magazine do dentists read?
mm,
Maybe you should buy an ad in that magazine. Maybe you should do an editorial, an op-ed in that magazine. That's going to be way higher yield for you than posting content on LinkedIn every day for a year, right? Are
right.
dentists on LinkedIn? I don't know. Like, I know everybody's on LinkedIn, everybody's on Instagram, but the noise is so much higher there, right? So it's
Yeah,
harder to get signal. Maybe you should go speak at a dentist conference.
yeah,
Maybe you should go create pamphlets for dentists. Maybe you should do a webinar for dentists. Like, there's so
right.
many ways that you can just have a smaller audience size where you have higher signal.
Yeah,
And so again, it's a creativity problem. It's like, where do you go to the place where the people who really need to hear the thing that you have for them, they can
right.
hear it without a lot of noise?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You've also mentioned the past books. I mean, Bill Kenny. We've had him on. Great guy, by the way. Shout out to Bill. from Focus Lab. I mean, he wrote a great book,
Yes.
and he uses that as leverage, and it's just instant authority. And it's never been easier to write a book.
Yes, totally. And books are one of the fewest. One of the books are. It's like one of the last forms of marketing that people still consider a gift. Like
Mm,
it's amazing how well a book can do. Is if you say to somebody like, "Hey, I gave you a gift. Here it is, a book." They'd be like,
mhm,
"Oh, thank you so much." You know, I
right.
read Bill's book. It's an awesome book. It is a pitch for Focus Lab.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
whole book. It's awesome. And it's a really great thing for them to give to prospects to help understand their process, or all that kind of stuff. And so like writing a book, that's a great way to do marketing that really cuts through the noise of you post on Instagram every day.
right.
Everybody posts on Instagram once a day. So it's like, how do you
Yeah,
get away from that stuff and really cut through the noise? Like a book is a great way to do it. Conferences are great ways to do it. Depending on your industry, there are ways that are higher yield. And I think a lot of us aren't creative enough to look for it.
yeah, yeah. So I'm definitely hearing, having a mindset shift, get real clear on the positioning. It sounds like it just gets easier when you have a real clear position, who you're going after, and you can have evidence that you provide that sort of outcome. Then you can pretty much charge whatever you want, and then you have different, prerequisites for working together, and use those as standards. I think things just get a little bit easier. It sounds like.
Totally agree. That when you have a strong position, things get a lot easier. Building a strong position is not easy, right? So that's the like dichotomy of it is like getting to a place where you have a strong position is hard. It's tough. It's tough to find it. It's tough to find the people that you want to talk to, what you have for them, figuring out your offers. Once you
Right.
get there, it's great. So for my agency that I ran, we didn't get there until year 6.
Mm,
So, the first 6 years was just doing all whatever for anybody, right? It's like, "You want an app built? Sure. You want this thing built? Absolutely. No problem. We'll figure that out." Right? It's just doing that, and part of it is the cash flow survival thing, but part of it is just like, I don't know what else to do.
mhm,
Who should we be talking to? And also, it's scary. It's scary to say we are no longer talking to 99% of the world. We're only going to talk to this 1% of people who need this very specific thing. It's super scary because it feels like you're closing doors, right?
right.
So it's really, really scary to do that, which is why most people don't do it, is because
Yeah.
they feel like it's like, I'm already struggling with cash. Now you want me to say no to 99% of the people that are coming in? Like,
Yeah.
how do I sustain myself in a business? It feels so counterintuitive. So it's so
Yeah.
hard to do it. Once you get there, it becomes easy. It really is an investment. It's a short-term loss for a long-term gain. So the
Yeah.
short-term loss is like, we're going to just cut off everyone and really talk to this one audience and really create as much as we can for them and help them as much as we can so that they know when we put marketing out or when we do this thing, we're calling their names,
Mm,
right? We're not just saying anybody who wants a website, yeah, come knock on our door. Because
right.
and you mentioned it earlier. You said calm businesses. That's what allows you to be calm is when you're like, you work for dentist and some podiatrist comes in and says, "Hey, can you build me a website?" No, you can calmly say, "No,
Yeah.
we don't do that." I know a friend who does websites for podiatrists. I'll refer you to him. Right, and that's it. It's calm. You don't have to waste any time. Sales cycles, calls. You don't have to do any of that stuff.
Mm,
It creates this focus for you where you're able to go like, we just don't do that.
mm,
And that's not a slight. That's not an insult. It's just like that's not who we are.
right. Right. Yeah. It becomes so much clearer. Would you say that, I mean, we've talked about hourly, the problems of hourly and the benefits of value based. Would you say that you have to really like, would you say you cannot be a generalist agency and do value based pricing? Would you take that stance on it?
A flavor of it, I think so. The flavor would be, I think, as a generalist, it's hard to articulate your value.
Mm,
So I think that's a tough part, and I think that anybody who operates in a generalist scenario often has that problem, right? If you think about to me, the hardest job on an agency team is producer. Why is it the hardest job? Because you kind of do a little bit of everything. You're supposed to be the glue, on a project, and no one really can tell what you do, but they can notice when you're gone, right?
mm,
So it's a really, really hard. It's a thankless job. Why? Because it's a generalist role, a
mm,
very crucial generalist role. Like I won't do when I was running my agency, we would not do projects without producers. But because it's a generalist role, it's hard to articulate the value of the role. And I think the same thing is true for a generalist agency. If you're a generalist agency and you do everything, how do you
mm,
articulate the value for your clients? How are you able to say to your clients, well, when we've done this project in the past with clients like you, this is what we generally see. Well,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't do that, if you do everything for everybody, then you don't have patterns that you can pull from. Or
Mm-hmm.
I think it's harder to pull from patterns. It's harder to identify them. It's harder to pull from. So I think that the focus really helps you as an agency when you say we do this thing, which implies we don't do anything else other than this. I think
Right.
it's easier to articulate value. As a generalist agency, you have to find other ways to articulate the value, which I think is really tough.
Yeah, yeah, and even the big agencies. I mean, I think about Scorpion. I was just on Scorpion's website, big marketing agency, several hundred employees, and they have like specific domain websites now, specific for lawyers or for plumbers. So then it's like you said earlier, that's like they're going back to trying to be small again.
Yeah, totally. One of my clients when I was running an agency was about.com. And about.com, they were a generalist website, right? They were the biggest generalist website on the web, I think, other than Wikipedia. And they were, you can go to about.com and find content on anything. And then one day, Google changed their algorithm and totally tanked the site.
Mm.
Because what Google basically started to index was like, we want to know that your site is about this thing. You have a site about pizza, or you have a site about, how to change the tires or mechanic, whatever it is. And the strategy when we worked with about.com, they're now a company called Dash. We helped them rebrand. And now what the strategy was, we're going to take all of the best performing content at about.com and we're going to distribute it to endemic sites that are about a specific thing. So the first site was called Very Well, and it was just about health and medicine. It's like, let's take the best health and medicine content and distribute it there. Now, today, I think it's still true. Dash is the largest publisher in America. I think and it's ranked in the world because of that strategy.
Mm.
Because so like I think the world, there's various debates about generalization versus specialization. I do think that there are a lot of places where the world rewards specialization only because people know what to expect there. It's harder to expect something in a generalist situation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Interesting. I didn't expect to kind of go there, but you're right. It's almost a prerequisite to really to standing firm in being able to. I imagine that the more clear you are in your positioning, the higher you can likely. There's probably a correlation with how high the value is that you can request or
Yeah,
demand.
I wish I had data on that, but I suspect that as well.
Yeah. Awesome, Dan. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on. I took a lot out of this here. I'm trying to see if there's any other nuggets here to pull from you. I feel like we got so much. Anything else you want to share? Places to find you, resources to check out?
Yeah, sure. You can find me on most of the social media places. I'm on LinkedIn pretty regularly. I'm on Twitter or X pretty regularly. Those are usually places that you can find me. So if anybody is interested and wants to message me about things, for a lot of people who are like, we're just having trouble getting clients. That's a thing that I see a lot lately is like, where
Mm.
do I get clients from? Take my free email course. I have an email course called the 6-Day Revenue Roadmap. If anybody's interested in that, send me a DM send me a DM that says Pixel Perfect on LinkedIn or on X, and I'll send you a link directly to that so you can check that out. It's 6 days. It's like, here's how you get clients, and here's how you build a cash flow machine, that essentially gets you to that point where you can then work on positioning. So that's usually the first entry point for most people. Hope that's helpful.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely is. Definitely recommend checking it out. Dan, thanks for coming on.
Adam, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Pixel Perfect podcast, where we go down the rabbit hole on the journey and motivations of creatives and entrepreneurs. Stay tuned for more stories to come. Until next time.